people are now saying, I have read it, by the way, if you go to the American Embassy, Addis Ababa website, Facebook and the Twitter, I will, but Facebook, you have more information. You see all kinds of comments, thousands and thousands of comments coming from the Ethiopian public, as you have said, reflecting bias, prejudice, misinformation, disinformation being exercised against the Ethiopian state, against the Ethiopian people. So here the embassy has to be very, very careful of what it is doing. The job, I have briefly described what its expected job and job description is. But in so doing, it should also take into account what the people of Ethiopia are saying. When thousands and thousands of people are writing you and complaining, then it means there is a problem. There is a problem that needs to be fixed. You know, if it is 10, 20, 30 people, well, you know, anything goes. But thousands, because I also monitor the website. I'm a regular visitor of the website, in Facebook especially. When thousands and thousands, like 95% and above, criticize your job, then there is a big problem. People are now saying, I have read it, by the way, if you go to the American Embassy, Addis Ababa website, Facebook and the Twitter, I will, but Facebook, you have more information. You see all kinds of comments, thousands and thousands of comments coming from the Ethiopian public, as you have said, reflecting bias, prejudice, misinformation, disinformation being exercised against the Ethiopian state, against the Ethiopian people. So here the embassy has to be very, very careful of what it is doing. The job, I have briefly described what its expected job and job description is. But in so doing, it should also take into account what the people of Ethiopia are saying. When thousands and thousands of people are writing you and complaining, then it means there is a problem. There is a problem that needs to be fixed. It was reported Addis was encircled 40 kilometers away. That's not the case. And now there is talk about terrorism attack. That's not the case. It was there was a message that said that in different websites that the government was losing. That's not the case. The government is winning the war. If that is the situation, then people say, why does the embassy, people feel? That's what I understand. People feel the embassy is getting into the Ethiopian domestic politics, being an instrument. So the trust will be broken between the embassies, the staff, and the leadership, and the Ethiopian public, and maybe the government as well. So one has to handle it with care. One has to handle it with care. The embassy has its own countless diplomats. They should go out, talk to the people, go to coffee houses, go to schools, ask people around, etc., and then report back. But when it is in black and white, it is put that the situation is deteriorating, and then Ethiopians see with their own naked eye that's not the case, then people say, we shouldn't wonder when people say, you guys, you know, you are messing up or you are doing something sinister in the relationship between Ethiopia and the USA. So that's how I think, for a start, I would say. I have read the reports and listened and watched some news bites about you know, that some American troops are being raided. And as far as I know, it's from the Commonwealth of Virginia, from the state of Virginia, a contingent of 750 or 800 American troops. Most of them are in the National Reserve, it's called. They are ready, and they took the flag and the send-off ceremony. I saw pictures of that. So they're going to be deployed in Djibouti. America has a well-established, strong base in Djibouti, Camp Legionnaire. So I bet, and I'm sure they're going to be hosted there, and they're going to be there. So when people hear such kinds of news, then they'll say, what's America intending to do? What's the intention of America? Because on the one hand, you read statements from the State Department or the Secretary of State or the National Security, or most of the time the spokesperson of the State Department, talking about Ethiopia, about this, about that. And people say, what's the next step of America? Is America going to intervene? These are what people ask themselves, because like all people in the world, Ethiopians love their country and they are alarmed and they are very, very really actively watching what America is doing, because people are saying an interference in the internal affairs of states. And Ethiopians say that that's not accepted in Ethiopia. This issue becomes a bigger issue. So now, whether America does it or not, this is how I see it. In the case, in my view, I don't think America will militarily intervene in Ethiopia. I think the State Department, the diplomats, they have well-versed diplomats, hopefully, who will advise the government not to do that. Because doing that, intervening in Ethiopia will be one of the worst decisions that America would make. And it will land in that one of the top lists, because Ethiopia is not any other ordinary country. The case of Ethiopia is very unique. One has to be an Ethiopian to understand Ethiopia, the feeling of Ethiopia, what Ethiopians have for the love of the country, for the integrity, and how they perceive and look at foreigners, because Americans are foreigners there. You know what I mean? And being the only independent country, and this is with pride that all Ethiopians speak about, and not being used to foreign interference, except the 5 short years stay of the Italian fascists in the 1930s, Ethiopians will say, no way. So that will make things, that will complicate things. What are the reasoning? The 2 questions you ask is the reasoning, the reason, the ether. What's the reasoning behind it is genocide. Genocide has been undertaken in Ethiopia. Is that right? I don't think so. There is no genocide. Genocide is a massive liquidation of people by virtue of their color, skin, or by ethnicity or tribalism. That's not happening in Ethiopia. The problem in North Ethiopia is pure and simple. A certain disgruntled group who had abused its own people for 27 years, who was autocratic and dictatorial, who abused democracy and Ethiopians, who finally in 2018, when people have had it, they rose up, people's uprising. It took 2-3 years. And by 2018, people threw away this group of people. And this group of people had all their chances to take part in the Ethiopian political system, but they refused, they sulked, they retreated. They were not pushed, they retreated themselves. They began to disengage themselves from state affairs. They began to say, we don't recognize the federal government, which is very crazy. Imagine California saying that we don't recognize the American Constitution. We don't recognize American election. Which American in his sane mind accepts this? And that's what we Ethiopians and Ethio-Americans ask ourselves. How on earth would it work for America and does not work? There shouldn't be double standards. So the way Ethiopia reacted was what? To maintain law and order. And then, not on top of that, they withdrew their members from parliament. They began to militarily get ready, secretly and openly. They even began to boast about it, that we are invincible. And then openly brag and say that we'll come back to Addis, by force, mind you, not democratically, by election, by force. And they, in November 3rd and 4th, in the midnight hour, close to the midnight hour, they attacked the Ethiopian army. Who would do that? A very treacherous act. So any government, it's not only a matter of Dr. Abiy, any government who is in power at the time would react. The Ethiopian government, the atrocities began with Maikadra by TPLF forces. And as a consequence of that, a joint investigating commission was set up with the United Nations Human Rights Commission and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Both of them took time and interviewed hundreds of people, photo evidence, physical evidence, and everything. And then last month, I believe, they came up with their reports, and I urge everyone to read it. And the conclusion was that no genocide was done in North Ethiopia and Tigray. So all this is really misinformation. All this is done by the TPLF and its supporters to get sympathy, to put one, sympathy of the Western world, including America. Second, it's a psychological warfare to undermine the credibility of the Ethiopian state as well as the Ethiopian government. And thirdly, they are hoping against all hope that under this, the United Nations Charter of Intervention, the R2P, responsibility to protect, we call it, under the R2P principle and clause, that America and the United Nations Security Council, your second question, will get together and then with blue helmets will march into Ethiopia. I mean, that is, the condition is not there for that situation. A good question. Well, the answer is I wish. You could start your answer with I wish, but the reality hits you. It's not the case. So the reality is the following. Well, when the Biden administration took over power, there was a big hope that the relations between Ethiopia and the USA will go to a higher level, because in the past 4 years, 5 years actually, under the Trump administration, it was lukewarm and cold. So people were hoping, even Ethiopian Americans voted for the Democratic Party, expecting and hoping that, they will understand, there was no literally African policy under Trump, but now they hope that the Blues or the Democrats will continue or at least reform a new design, a new African policy. That was the expectation, but the reality was totally different towards the disappointment of Ethiopian Americans, because the policy that was immediately put in shape and in place by the new government led by administration of Biden was not conducive to the bilateral relations between the two countries. Immediately, the squeezing Ethiopia was the issue. And people were shocked in America and here as well. People were really shocked why this was done. For example, November the 4th and 3rd, the war began in the north. And then January 20th, the Biden administration took over power. Immediately, the statements coming from those responsible for a foreign policy, State Department and National Security Council was to put in parity TPLF and the Ethiopian government as one. Now, this is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, this is not that you expect from America, meaning that one is a sovereign government, legitimate government, representing 140 million people. And the other is a default, bankrupt, rebellious political organization, which had broken all the laws of Ethiopia, and which was trying to, by force, come back to Addis and rule the Ethiopian people. Can you imagine, by force? So everybody knows that. And no clear stand was made by the Biden administration. We expected that the Biden administration will tell the TPLF, stop the nonsense. If you have grievances, present your grievances peacefully. Don't take up arms. We expected the Biden government to support the Ethiopian government. Instead, they wanted this 27 years, brutal government, which had all the opportunities to spread, consolidate democracy in Ethiopia, which it didn't. And it's like a tacit indirect support. And therefore, that will take me to the next point, and that is that what's wrong? Does America have a shortage of knowledgeable people on Ethiopian foreign policy and diplomacy, on the Horn, on Somalia, on Eritrea, on South Sudan, on Egypt? No, there are countless American experts. Then what's going on? That's a great question. I mean, it has become a reality. It was started, anyhow, let me tackle it from this sense. First, theoretically, in reality, America is a free country. It's supposed to be free, and it's a free country where there is freedom of expression and no control of the flow of information. What Twitter is doing is, if you apply the American model and the American theory based on even on the Constitution, is totally wrong. That's a great question. I mean, it has become a reality. You know, it was started. Anyhow, let me tackle it from this sense. First, theoretically, in reality, America is a free country. It's supposed to be free, and it's a free country where there is freedom of expression and no control of the flow of information. What Twitter is doing is, if you apply the American model and the American theory based on even on the Constitution, is totally wrong.
It's against the American model and Constitution.
Absolutely, 100%, it is wrong. What they are doing is they have become political instruments in a way, it means. Political instrument of whom? There are so many rumors going around. Some say the government is exerting pressure on them, like the hashtag no more movement, I think has been silenced. Why? Because it got traction, hundreds and thousands and millions of people exchanges, and hundreds and thousands are taking part. The diaspora across the world, Ethiopians here, where you are in Ethiopia and here in America. So for a change, really, in America, I mean, it is really baffling, you know, when then you ask yourself, what's going on? Are we trying to restrict information? Are we trying to filter information, what you hear and what you say? If you don't like what you hear, are you going to, then what makes us in America better than developing countries, if that's the case? Tell me, what made America unique?
Yeah,
isn't it
just witnessing censorship, just in black and white.
So I mean, this issue is not an Ethiopian issue. It's a constitutional issue. It's an issue for each and every American citizen, and for each and every peace-loving and democracy-loving and freedom of the press supporter of America. Because today, it's the Ethiopian community, and tomorrow, who knows? Maybe the Mexican community, or maybe the Guinean or Malian community in Africa, in America, or once again, the Egyptians living in exile, or the Sudanese opposition in America. Because where would it stop? Because this is unheard of. This is unheard of. Ethiopian voices are getting louder. And by design, Ethiopian strong social activists who are supporters or followers, 10, 50, 30, 100, 200,000 were closed down. Why? Why? Today, yours is closed, tomorrow it could be mine or it could be yours. Why? Is that this is un-American. It's not an American value. This is un-American. And people, to answer your question, yes, the diaspora, they are struggling. They are making it known in interviews and in newspapers, what's happening to the Ethiopian community. And people are asking, companies, corporations like Facebook, Twitter, etc., they are put under pressure. Is that the role of the American government? Should it be that if the pressure is coming from the American government, should that be the case? So these are fundamental questions. It's not only about Ethiopia, it's about really the soul of America itself. Where is America heading? January 6th, you know, supporters of the far right groups, they attacked the American Congress. Okay. That itself was a big scandal. In American history, it's a black spot. By force, they tried to change the will of the American people, reverse the election by force, even not recognizing that Biden has won. Okay, so here we are. And one last point regarding social media is, you know, let's not forget, guys, that Twitter and the others are corporations.